1A, living in the media age. In chapter 1, we will not be doing a lot of calculations, but instead, we'll be focused on logic. Logic is the study of all the different steps and ideas that we have of reasoning. And what we're using logic for, in this case, is to make some sort of arguments. And if you look at the arguments above, here, we're trying to use some information. I'm trying to use the information that I got sick just hours after eating at Burger Hut. And that's sort of the piece of information we use. These are called premises. And these premises are used to support the conclusion. The conclusion in this case is that the food at Burger Hut must have made me sick. In this example argument, the argument itself is incorrect. It has faulty logic. And we call these type of arguments a fallacy. And in 1A, we'll be talking about many types of different fallacies. And you have to be able to recognize which type of fallacy or which type of mistakes are we making in our logic when you see an argument that is a fallacy. The first example is a type of fallacy called appeal to popularity. In this example argument, Toronto is the best city in Canada. More people live in Toronto than in any other place in Canada. Here, we're trying to reach the conclusion that Toronto is the best city. The evidence that we use to support this idea is that there are more people living in Toronto than any other place. Now, just because there are more people doing something or more people believing in something doesn't make it true. And this is very important. More than 2,000 years ago, most people on Earth believed that the Earth is flat. But the Earth was not flat back then. In fact, we know Earth has always been a spherical, right? A ball shape. And it has never been flat. And just because there are more people believing that the Earth is flat back then, doesn't change the shape of the Earth. The second type of fallacies that we'll talk about is called false cause. In this example argument, I placed the quartz crystal on my forehead, and in 5 minutes, my headache was gone. This crystal made my headache go away. Here, the argument is trying to reach the conclusion that a headache has gone away because of the crystal. And the reasoning is that the quartz crystal was placed on the forehead, and later on, the headache was gone. There are two events, one happening before the other, one happening after another. And in false cause, we are trying to make the connection that the first event caused the second event. Now, it's important that the first event doesn't actually cause the second event. They might just happen one after another. Let's say you finish watching the video today and you go out and you met your true love. Now, watching this video doesn't help you find your true love, right? We didn't talk anything about relationships. And it just so happened by coincidence that after you watch the video and you go out, you found true love. But watching this video does not cause you to find your true love. The next type of fallacy that we'll talk about is called appeal to ignorance. And in this example, scientists have not found any concrete evidence of aliens visiting Earth. Therefore, anyone who claims to have seen a UFO must be hallucinating. Here we're trying to make the argument that aliens have not visited Earth. And the premise that we use to support the conclusion is that there are no proof. Now, it's important that no proof doesn't mean the same thing as alien visit have not occurred. Because we could have the thing happening, we just weren't able to find it. But just because we don't know about it doesn't mean that the thing doesn't exist. For example, just because everybody around you have a place to live and have food to eat doesn't mean that they are that doesn't mean that we don't have a homelessness problem or problem for getting people enough food here in the city. Next type of fallacy is called hasty generalization. 2 cases of COVID-19 has occurred along the street where high voltage power line. The power line must be the cause of these illnesses. Here we're trying to reach the conclusion that the power line is causing COVID. And the premise that we have is that there are 2 cases of COVID where the power line is running through. Well, in hasty generalization, we found a couple of examples, we found a few examples, and then we make our judgment too fast. We make our conclusion too fast. And we cannot make a conclusion based on just 1 or 2 or 3 examples. So what you have seen so far is that we have introduced different types of fallacies. And what you have to be able to do is see an argument and tell me which type of fallacy it is. In this case, our example argument is you don't like pasta, so you must like hamburgers. Here, we're treating food like a binary, like a 2 option choices. You either like pasta or you like hamburger. And if you don't like pasta, that means you must like hamburger. There's no other choice. This is called limited choice. And this is a common fallacy as well. The next fallacy that we'll talk about is called appeal to emotion. We'll notice that in advertisements, often we'll see a picture of baby or a video baby. And in this particular example, we have advertisement for tires. And the advertisement has a baby on it saying, because there's so much riding on your tire. And here, the conclusion is sort of subtle. The conclusion that we're trying to reach here is that you should buy tires from that brand. The premise that we have here is simply, well, we love our babies. Babies are amazing. And we're sort of using an emotional response. Everyone loves baby. And to make you to want to buy the brand of tires. And of course, we know just because we love our baby has nothing to do with why we need to buy that brand of tire, right? And often we see this in advertisement a lot. We'll see a really handsome celebrity, a really beautiful movie star, or we might see a really cute dog, and that's supposed to triggers some sort of emotional response, we're supposed to be like, oh, and we're supposed to, buy into the idea that that brand is better than the other. Another one, another type of fallacy is called personal attack. Now, personal attack has been around for thousands of years. It's been around since the Roman days, and so it has a Latin name for it. It's called ad hominem. Now, you might see the two words being used interchangeably. In our example here, one person said, well, you didn't prepare hospitals or ramp up testing in preparation of, say, the COVID outbreak. The second person just said, you're disgraceful. Or it can be any other type of argument. It can be like, the second person could have said, you're ugly, you're stupid. And these type of statements are not really making any arguments, right? Making any claims or making any explanation of how we have prepared, how instead of not preparing the hospital or doing more testing, we are doing something else, or perhaps we actually did that. We're simply attacking the other person, saying that they're stupid, or they're disgraceful, or they're not trustworthy. The next type of fallacy is called circular reasoning. If we look at the example argument here, the argument says that society has an obligation to provide health insurance because healthcare is a right of citizenship. Now, there are a few complicated words that we use in here. But if you think about it, here we're trying to say the society, right, the government needs to give us health insurance, right? Give us the ability to go see a doctor, to go to the hospital. And why is that? Well, the argument, the premise that it's providing is that healthcare. So what's healthcare? Well, healthcare is to be able to see the doctor, to go to the hospital. Same thing. It's a right of citizenship. What's the right of citizenship? Well, a right of citizenship is, say, being a Canadian, right? Being a Canadian so that the government will take care of you. The government will take care of me. Well, isn't that the same thing as being a part of society, right? Being a part of the Canadian society where the government is going to take care of you. So you'll notice in this example, in this argument, the conclusion and the premise are exactly the same. We just repeat the statement using slightly different words. And in this type of fallacy, we call them circular reasoning, because we're not providing you with any new information. We're just stating the statement and argue it over and over again. The next fallacy we'll talk about is called diversion. Diversions are sometimes called red herring, because red herring used to be a type of fish that would distract people from what's actually going on. Here, in the example argument, the argument says that we should not continue to fund cloning research because there are so many ethical issues involved. Strong ethical foundations are necessary to proper functioning of society, so we cannot afford to have too many ethical loose ends. The argument seems complicated, but when we think about it, the conclusion is that we should not continue to fund cloning research. Everything that comes after the because is our premise. And our premise is that actually that ethical issues or strong ethical foundation is important. And you'll notice in this case, it doesn't really talk about what kind of ethical issue there are. Instead, it's talking about how ethical issues are important. But it's not talking about why we should stop cloning research and what kind of ethical issue is the cloning research causing. And instead, we sort of got distracted and we talk about something else completely. And that's called diversion. The next type of fallacy is called strawman. And in strawman, suppose if we look at the example here, suppose a politician want to legalize cannabis, legalize marijuana. And the goal for doing that is to reduce the amount of people that we put in jail, so reduce overcrowding in jail, and save money on enforcement. So we don't have to send out all the policemen or send out all the prosecutors to go catch all these people making illegal trades or using. Now, the opposition is making the argument that the first politician over here doesn't think there's anything wrong or doesn't think there's any problem with using cannabis. Now, what you'll notice in this case is a little bit more complicated. The politician is trying to legalize marijuana not because there's nothing wrong with it, but because legalizing cannabis, while it might have its problems, can help with these two other things. But here, the second person sort of changes the argument of the first politician and says that the first politician believes that legalization of cannabis is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's healthy for everyone. And that's called strawman, because in essence, we're creating a fake argument. And the reason why we create that fake argument is so that it's easier for us to beat this argument, right? To poke holes in it. So even though the politician didn't say anything about whether using cannabis is good or bad, we're trying to change his argument and say that, oh, you're saying that using cannabis is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. So make sure that you review all the different types of fallacies. And later on, when you do the practice questions, you'll notice that we'll give you an argument and you have to identify the type of fallacy that it is.